All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to all of you who are joining on the webinar, and welcome to all our folks here in Denver. For those of you joining on the webinar, sorry you couldn't join us in Denver. We're having a great conference so far. This is our first live webinar that we're doing from the conference. I'm Evan Rosenberg from Department of Labor, and I'm going to talk a little bit about where we are on our performance and reporting for the Youth CareerConnect program. All right, and my clicker does work. Awesome. So for those of you who have attended this session before in the past, the first few slides will look familiar to you. I like to make sure we're all on an even playing field for those of you who are either new to YCC or new to our annual grantee meeting. And the first slide I always like to talk about is the importance of performance accountability. And then I'll talk a little bit about our performance measures and our targets for them. It's kind of the intro stuff, so I apologize for those of you who have seen that already. But I want to make sure everyone's on the same page. And then from there, I'll go into our data snapshot through March of 2017. We don't have the data yet for the April through June quarter. So it's 1 quarter shy of 3 full years. So, you know, unfortunately, we're already 3/4 of the way through our grant program. It's kind of sad to think about, but also exciting at the same time to see how our young people are progressing through the program. All right, so importance of performance and reporting, threefold. First and foremost, we really believe that the data is for you all as program operators to run your program. And for those of you who are familiar with our data, you know we collect a lot of it. We have 15 different performance measures, which is a lot more than we usually have in most programs. But we do that for a reason, to give you all tools to help you see how well you're doing, where the holes are, where you can improve, and give you real-time feedback on the program. So that's first and foremost. It's for you for decision-making, continuous improvement. Secondly, it's for us, the Department of Labor, to help oversee these grants. You know, as we all know, taxpayer dollars funds them, and it's our job. It's our job at the Department of Labor to make sure that you all are doing a good job spending your grant money, and we need data to help us figure that out. We also need to, you know, go out and visit you, and federal process officers come out and see how you're doing in the real world, and that combined with the data really help us see what's going on. And then lastly, it's to demonstrate success to our stakeholders. We all believe in these programs. We've seen firsthand the importance of them when we've gone out on our ELOs yesterday and today, and so we want to make a case to stakeholders and funders that these programs should be funded, whether that's us at the Department of Labor making a case for that, whether it's you all in your local communities. We believe that the data will help you tell a story in your communities to help raise the funds and sustain this great model that we've created. All right, so I'm not going to go into great detail on what the performance measures are, but I did want to make sure people saw them. So we have the ultimate goal for the program, which is to ensure that all of our completers complete all of the following: graduate from high school with a high school diploma, obtain a degree or an industry-recognized credential in an H-1B industry, and have earned college credit toward a degree in their selected H-1B industry. And then lastly, move into a positive placement, which could either be employment, post-secondary education, further occupational skills training. And I think it's a good idea to revisit the overall goals of the program now that we have people graduating and completing the program right now. If you're running a 3-year model, or if you're a 4-year model, they'll complete next spring. To really think about, are we seeing all 3 of those things happen in our completers? And we have 2 sets of measures. We have short-term measures, which are the ones we've had lots of data on over the course of the program that tell us how we're doing in real time. And then we have long-term measures that we don't have a lot of data yet, but depending on what type of model you are, if you're a 2- or a 3-year model, we do have some long-term data on how you're doing. And so we're starting to get some of that data, and over the course of the 4th year, we'll get lots more of that long-term data. I should also say, if you have any questions about anything I talk about, feel free to raise your hand and jump in. I don't want to be the only one talking this afternoon, so if there's anything you don't understand or you want me to elaborate on, or you want to jump in and offer your perspective, please feel free to do that. So target setting, each of the 15 measures have a target. Some of them are national targets that we set at the beginning of the grant working with the Department of Education. Others are specific to your program model, and so you have your own target based on the type of program model you're running. So here are 10 short-term measures, and it kind of follows the progression of an individual in the program. So we have enrollment rate, mentoring rate, which is one of the important services that we focus on in our program. We have a couple measures around attendance, an attendance rate and a chronic absence rate. We have a yearly program retention rate, which measures the retention in the program from one year to the next. So, this past year we measured how many people were in the program in year 2 and continued in the program in year 3. Which is not a good indication of whether it's a solid program or not. An internship placement rate, that's another one of our important services that we're really focused on, which is why we spent a good portion of yesterday and today taking you around Denver, showing you all kinds of great internships. And I got to say, I was really impressed with the internship opportunities I saw both yesterday and today. We have an internship completion rate, making sure that those who start internships complete them. A work readiness indicator. For that one, we have an employer evaluation tool, and hopefully you all are aware of this and are doing it, where for anyone who does an internship, we want the employer to evaluate that intern at the end of their internship opportunity, just the same way that we all get evaluated in our jobs. We feel like it's a good thing to get young people used to that process, that your employer is going to evaluate you and tell you how well you're doing. And so we developed an employer evaluation tool or a work readiness tool for you to use, and it essentially measures whether an individual is considered work ready by the employer at the end of their internship. Just a quick show of hands, how many people are using that work readiness tool for their internships? Kind of what I expected. So if you're not, we can make sure and send that out so you have the tool, and make sure for all your internships to use that work readiness tool and tell your employers that they should be using that tool to evaluate their interns. Yes, absolutely.
On some of the other webinars and conference calls very early on, you mentioned that the sites, if they have their own work readiness indicator, that would be acceptable. Is that still the case? That's still the case.
If you have your own employer evaluate or your own intern evaluation tool that you want to use with your employers, by all means you can do that. I would say the 2 criteria we want to make sure are in place are, 1, it's an employer-driven tool where it's the employer evaluating the work readiness of the intern, and 2, that you are using with your intern and able to somehow determine whether or not that individual is work ready, since it's a work readiness indicator. But as long as the employer is the one leading it and it determines whether someone's work ready, it's fine to use your own tool. But if you don't have one, definitely use ours. All right, and then the last 2 short-term measures are around post-secondary attainment. So measuring the percentage of participants who are getting some type of post-secondary credit during their time in the YCC program. And then the second piece of it is the average number of credits they're attaining for those who are attaining credit. And for this one, what I've talked about in the past is, we all know that some colleges and universities might accept, like, this course is credit, but others might not. Some might accept, like, a 4 on the AP exam for this. Others might accept a 3. And we all know that, like, you can't figure out immediately on the spot, is this going to count as college credit? So what we ask you to do is, if it's anything that could result in college credit at any of your local colleges or universities, then it's acceptable and you can count that. So any questions about any of the short-term measures? All right, so let's talk about the long-term measures. First one is final program retention rate, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's how many people were in the program all the way through and completed it and were retained throughout. Second one is a placement rate. I talked about the 3 types of placements, either unsubsidized employment, post-secondary education, or some type of further occupational skills training. Hopefully all of our high school graduates are going into one of those 3 things, and that's what our placement rate measures. High school diploma attainment rate, pretty self-explanatory. Credential attainment rate, similar, but attaining some type of industry-recognized credential other than the high school diploma or equivalency. And then the last one, which is a little bit redundant, I can blame the Department of Education on this one. For some reason, they really wanted a combined indicator that combined the first two. So we did that. So it's the diploma mental attainment rate. It's the percentage of participants that attain both during their stay in the program. All right. Any questions so far? And Angela, do we have a chat feature where people can ask questions? Any questions in the chat room? For those of you listening via webinar, if you have questions, feel free to enter them in the chat. All right, so let's talk about the interesting stuff. Where are we now so far? Again, this is through the end of March of this year. So enrollment, we are doing really, really well with enrollment. Great job. You can feel good about that. You can see that we're at over 21,500 participants enrolled nationally. And we are, believe it or not, almost at our goal for the 4 years of the program at this point, not even 3 full years through. So I don't have any concerns nationally around enrollment. In terms of participants enrolled in year 3 compared to the goal, we have over 7,000 enrolled just in this program year, year 3, compared to a goal of a little over 6,000. So we're at 114% enrollment rate for this program year, which exceeds the national goal. And in terms of grantees, 22 of our 24 grantees are doing well in enrollment, and we have no concerns about them. We have 2 grantees that are under 80% enrollment. I'm guessing you all know who you are, and hopefully have strategies to address that as we move into year 4. Now let's talk about participants who receive program services. So this is an area where we obviously expect all of our participants to participate in program services, right? We have a whole list of program services in our participant tracking system, or PTS is what we refer to it. And so we would expect every participant to participate in a program service. And this isn't unique for our program, and pretty much any program I've ever been associated with, we always see that there are some individuals entered into our reporting system who don't have services associated with them, which we obviously don't want to see, because anyone in our program should be receiving services. So I like to show you this number and ask you to look at it for your own program. 94% of our participants receive services. We want to make sure that number is at 100%, because like I talked about, anyone in the program should, of course, be receiving services. But there are 20,287 out of the 21,543 that I talked about that don't have any services entered into the PTS for them. So that's, I don't know, roughly a little less than 1,300 participants that we need to figure out why there aren't services. So I have a few to-dos for you when you leave here as it relates to performance and data that I'll talk about over the next half hour or so, and this is one of them. Look at your data, look at that number of participants who have received services compared to overall people enrolled, and try and figure out why those would be different, and if they're individuals that don't have services, if it's because you haven't entered them, or is it somebody you thought was going to enroll in the program, but it turned out they never did, but you had put their information in as an enrollee. So that's something we should definitely get cleaned up. Any questions about that? Make sense to everybody? Great. And then another thing I look at is exiters. It's a good indication of how our program is doing in terms of keeping participants enrolled. So at this point in the program, you could be an exiter for 2 reasons. One, kind of the good kind, you've successfully completed the program. So those of you running 2-year, maybe 3-year models, you'll have some successful completers who have exited the program, and that's wonderful. But then there's a second kind of exiter, which is someone who leaves the program before completing it. And we all know that's going to happen. We don't expect you ever to have a 100% completion rate. Participants start the program, realize it's not for them. Participants move out of the area. Lots of understandable and acceptable reasons. But we like to look at that number of exiters and make sure we don't see, half the country has exited the program already. And so where that number is right now is 14.5% of participants have exited the program. And when you subtract out the successful completers, it's 11.1%, which to me is pretty good. It's a good indicator of, we're retaining about 89% of our students in the program. So that means you all are running good programs and people want to continue in it. So that's great. All right, let's talk about attendance. So we measure attendance rate, and we're doing really well there. 96% attendance rate for year 3, and about 95% program to date. We had a goal of 90%, so we're easily exceeding that, doing really well. The other piece of attendance that we measure is chronic absence rate, which is the percentage of participants who have missed, I can't remember how many days. We have a set percentage, maybe 20% of the days or something like that. Sorry, I should know this, but I don't. But it's basically the participants who are chronically absent, missing too much school. And for that, we're not doing too badly. We have almost an 11% chronic absence rate for year 3, and our goal was to keep it at 10% or under, so we're just off of that. Program to date, a little over 12%. So not quite achieving the goal, but pretty close. All right, so let's look at some of the enrollment data. You know, on your sheets, you probably can't read that all that well. I can't. It's making me feel old. I used to be able to read really little print, and the last couple of years, that has, you know, that skill is waning. So I'm going to look over here. So enrollment rate, the numbers you see at the top is how we're doing in year 3. So I talked about before, our enrollment rate for year 3 is 114%. You can see year 2, we were at 120% enrollment for our goal in year 2. And then program to date, we're probably about 116% of where we should be on enrollment. So doing great there. Participation rate, that was one I talked about where we want it to be 100%. It's at 94%. And it's kind of the same place it's been last year. And then you see the exiters, you see that number is increasing, but obviously as the program goes along, it will increase because we get more successful completers and a few more people dropping out of the program. Attendance rate, you can see how we're doing across the years. Our attendance rate in year 3 is better than it's ever been, so that's great to see. And the chronic absence rate has remained fairly steady. All right, so let's talk about demographics. Who's in our program? A little bit more male than female, but pretty close. In terms of race, white is at 54%, Hispanic Latino 44%, African American 22%, Asian 5%, American Indian, Alaska Native 2%, and more than one race 2%. So pretty diverse program. We saw that a little bit in Denver, and same thing we see nationally, so we like to see that. We want to see good diversity. Some other demographics. We talked a little while ago about participants with IEPs who are in internships. We have a little under 7% that report having a disability. Low income, we're at 42%, which is great. Normally the programs we operate at the Department of Labor really focus on low-income, underserved populations. For the Youth CareerConnect program, we didn't have that requirement on these grants, but we did try and encourage it and emphasize it to give low-income people opportunity through these programs. And almost half of our participants are low-income, so we're really pleased to see that. We have over 11% who are limited English proficient, homeless and runaway 1%, pregnant or parenting, very small number, just 0.3%, and then foster youth 0.2%. In terms of grade level, you can see, and this is where they start the program, as you all know, or hopefully know, the latest you can enroll in the YCC program is 11th grade, because we wanted to make sure that every model gave at least 2 years for a student to participate in high school. So you can see that more of our programs than not have a 9 through 12 model where students enroll in 9th grade. So almost half the country has participants enrolling in 9th grade, which is great because then they get 4 full years of this opportunity. 23% start in 10th grade and 29% 11th grade. All right, service information, that might be a little bit small to see from the back of the room or even on your paper. That one I can sort of read. We talked about that 94% number needs to be 100% for service participation. The most common service that you all are providing is not surprising, career and academic counseling. That's something we would expect, almost all participants to be a part of, and that's at 81%. Coming in second, very closely behind, is those who participate in industry-specific YCC courses. That's at 75%. And just a reminder, that is a requirement of the grant where we want at least one industry-specific YCC course per participant. Maybe it doesn't happen until later in high school for some of the participants, and they're not doing it in 9th grade, but at some point we definitely want them to do that. And then going down the list a little bit further, 47% in work experience. That could include, job shadowing and more of the lighter work experience things. And we'll talk about internships in a minute, which is another type of work experience. Employer-provided services, employers coming into the high schools and talking about what they do, things like that. 34%, leadership development, 37%, supportive services, 33%, mentoring, 27%. I'll talk more about that in a few moments. Community service, 18%, internship, 13%. I'll also elaborate on that in a little bit. And we have, this is a great number, we have 2,759 professional development activities that have occurred nationally in the Youth CareerConnect program, which, we typically talk about all of our services to the students, but it's, also very important to make sure that we're providing teachers and other professionals with development opportunities for this, and you all have done a great job on that, so we're happy to see that. Any questions so far? All right. Lost my place on my little sheet here.
I just wanted to make an announcement that we will post the slides on the community of practice after the conference, so you'll have bigger ones to look at later, so they will be posted.
Thanks, Angela. All right, so service comparison over time, and this is program to date data, meaning that first bar is where we are at the end of year 1, the second bar at the end of year 2, and the third bar at the end of year 3. And you can see that they're all going in the right direction, which is good. You can see some of the larger jumps in the services provided, like industry-specific YCC courses. That second one went from slightly over 60 to 75%. Work experience was another pretty big jump, which was good to see. Mentoring was a pretty big jump from year 2 to year 3, which is good to see. And you can see when we compare mentoring to the goal is that purple bar. We're above it for program to date, but for individual program year nationally, we're not quite there. And then internships, which I'll talk about in a minute, you can see the comparison between the green bar and the purple bar. The third and fourth bars there, and we're still far below our goal for internships. But hopefully that is currently being turned around this summer. Denver's a good example of that, where I think they said they had almost 300 participants in summer internships, something like that. So hopefully lots of internships going on around the summer. All right, let's talk about more of the measures. Yearly program retention. So nationally, we're at 70% for this compared to a year 3 goal of 85%. So we are not achieving our goal. So this is one of those things where it's a few grantees that I think aren't entering the data that are bringing down our data nationally. So we have 9 grantees who are achieving the goal out of our 24 grantees. Means we have 15 who are not, but 3 in particular are below 30%. And based on the exit data, we all know that 9/10 of our participants are still in the program. So there's a disconnect between this number and that number, and I think the disconnect is simply that the data is not being entered in some sites. And so I'll take you back to my very first slide where I talked about the importance of performance accountability. Gave you 3 really good reasons why this data is important, and we want the data to be accurate. And particularly, we're in a new administration where our new administration is asking us about all our programs and wants to see the data on them, and we want to show the true, accurate picture of how well you're doing. And so this is a good example of a measure I don't think accurately reflects how well we're doing, and that impacts all of us. So it's really important to make sure that this data is accurate. And this is a really simple measure to do data-wise in the PTS. It's just one field, which is participation date in the year 3 participation date and year 4 participation date. And it's just one field in the PTS. And you'll see this bullet point here, is we implemented a group entry feature for retention. Going into year 3, where instead of having to go in each individual's screen in the PTS and put in the date, you could do it as a group. So every single participant in your program, you could check off that, they are still participating in the third year of the program and do it all in one shot. And so we were thinking that would make it really easy on you all, because we recognize that for some of the larger programs like Denver and LA and New York City, going into hundreds and hundreds of records and doing that was pretty tedious. But now it's pretty simple to do. So this is another one of your homework assignments, is go back, look at your yearly program retention for year 3, make sure it's what it's supposed to be. And if it's not, go back and enter the data. You can always go back and enter the data, and then when the new quarterly report comes out, it will reflect old data that you even entered previously. So it's never too late to fix your data is one of my messages here. Questions about that? Everybody know what I'm referring to with that measure and how to do it and how it all works? Yes?
Is there a simple way to pull up students who have blank participation dates for year 3?
That's a good question. So we have an export feature in the PTS, and I am not an expert in the export feature. I don't know, where's Jean, if she happens to know. There you are. Do you know in the export feature if that is possible to figure out?
Yeah, I can double check, but if you export your data into Excel, you can create tables and pull up that particular data item and identify what YCC ID is attached to that don't have that. So there's a group data entry field, as Evan mentioned, and so we can provide you guidance on how to actually do that, but what you do is you go into the system and you select all the students you want and you enter a single date, and that's attached to each of those students.
And hopefully everyone knows this, but for those of you who don't, we have a PTS users group, and we have a users group call monthly, and we could put this on our next monthly users group call, is just to make sure everybody knows how to do that with the export feature. Or, and send an email to YCC if you want to join the users group. And if you want an answer to exactly how to do it, you can also email YCC, and we can help you figuring out that export feature as well. Were there other questions about that? Thought I saw one other hand, no? All right, mentoring rate. So this is one we talked about a lot last year. One of the services we really want to focus on. We know this can be a difficult one for a variety of reasons. We're doing better in it. So nationally in year 3, 18% roughly of participants participated in mentoring compared to a goal of 21%. So pretty close to our national goal, which is good to see, much better than in year 2. And again, this is really dependent on the model. This is a good example of one of those targets that was very model dependent. And we let you all tell us what your mentoring goal was in your proposals. And then we even went back and gave you a second opportunity in year 1 to refine your mentoring rate if you didn't quite understand what you were getting into with mentoring. And a lot of people took us up on that. So hopefully your targets are realistic. And some people didn't build the mentoring component in until year 3 or even year 4. And so if you're one of those grants, you might not be expected to have mentoring yet because it wasn't part of your model until later, and that's fine. But for others, you had mentoring built in early, and some are doing well, some are not. So program to date through year 3, we have 25% of participants participating in mentoring, which is great. It's increasing each year. Rates have increased both program year to date and program to date, and then almost half of our grantees are meeting their year 3 mentoring goals, 11 out of 24, which is up from 6 out of 24 in year 2. So that's great. I'm hearing voices. All right, questions about mentoring? Internships, really important part of the program. One of the things that makes the YCC program unique is, there's not all school districts across the country give opportunities for internships and work-based learning. At the Department of Labor, we feel that is a critical component of all of the youth programs we operate. There's data out there that shows that people who participate in internships and work experience have higher graduation rates, better connections to the labor force down the road. You know, just thinking about my own personal experience having summer jobs in high school, and you know, no matter what they were, they teach you the value of work and responsibility, and there's just so much good stuff that comes out of internships. I think that was reinforced a lot yesterday and today. So can't emphasize the importance of internships. Again, this is another one we know it can be difficult developing those employer relationships. A lot of times employers haven't worked with schools a lot in the past. Joe from Denver talked about, you know, that's critical, is making sure employers understand that schools want to work with them and why it's important, and why it's important for the employers. They're building their future workforce. And saw great examples of that in Denver. So now the bad news, which is internships where we are right now. 4.5% of participants were in internships in year 3 compared to our goal of almost 27%. Now keep in mind a big caveat comes with this, which is, you know, we all know in schools your internship model is a lot of times going to be a summer internship. And if those summer internships are probably starting in May or June, and we don't have that data yet. So our data is through March of 2017. So if a lot of you are operating internships solely in the summer and they started in that April through June quarter, they're not going to be picked up in this number even though they're part of your year 3 data. So just a sense, an honest sense, how many, raise your hand if you're doing lots of summer internships this summer that just haven't shown up in the data yet. So a fair amount, which is good. I'll definitely be eager to look at that data when it comes in the middle of August and see our internship number jump. But even given that, it's still lower than where we would expect it to be. As you can see, program to date nationally, we're at about 10%. So still a ways to go there. And so far, no one is achieving their internship goal for year 3. But again, we don't have a complete picture of the data in year 3. Every year when I do this presentation, I wish that I had the full year's data before talking to you, because it's hard to really understand what's going on if you're missing that last quarter of data, particularly around the internship measure. So we definitely get that. When we look at the program to date data, 4 grantees are doing really well program to date. 3 grantees don't have any internships yet, although 1 doesn't have an internship goal until year 4, so obviously they wouldn't. The other 2, theirs started in year 3, so I'm hoping for those 2 grantees. It's just that all their internships are in the 4th quarter of year 3. You know who you are if you fall in that boat, and hopefully they really are in the 4th quarter of year 3. Good news on internships. Do you have a question?
In fact, you're really only looking at, if you think that summer is the biggest time, you're only looking at 1 year. Because in my mind, our program started in September because we got our grant. We had a planning period until the end of August. So our year started September to be in the year. So the following summer was really the first summer. This is the second summer, and you haven't really gotten our data yet. So I'm just encouraging you to think you're going to see a big jump, right?
Yes and no. So this is our 3rd summer. So we do have 2 summers of data, but keep in mind that to further your argument, the majority of programs had a 9 through 12 program model, and so we're talking 9th and 10th graders those first 2 years, and so they may not have had internships built in until the 3rd summer. So we're really hoping to see that big bump in internships happening literally as we speak, and then at the end of the quarter ending June 30th of this year, when we get that data, we'll see a big bump. If we don't, you'll definitely hear about it from me in year 4. All right, so the good news on internships is those who are doing internships are completing them, and they are work ready when they completed them. I talked a little while ago about our work readiness indicator, and 97% of our participants who've completed internships are attaining that work readiness indicator. So that's great to see. So just spending another minute, aside from the kind of issues with what we talked about in terms of internships not happening until this summer, what other things are people experiencing in terms of trying to develop internships? Are there any struggles you're having that maybe other grantees can help you with? Does anyone want to share any insights you might have on internships? No? Anyone on the webinar?
We do have a question about mentoring.
Okay. Read our question for us, Angela.
Can you review required hours for each student?
I can't because I don't recall it off the top of my head, but we can certainly get that information to you. I feel like we said it's just we want a full year of mentoring, right? Yeah, you guys should know this. You tell me. Is that it? 1 hour per quarter and for a full year? Is that right? 1 hour per quarter and for a full year. Thank you. All right. Any last thoughts about internship before we keep moving? Okay, post-secondary credit. This kind of potentially falls into that same characterization as internships, where perhaps we won't see this until later in the program. But I think I would have expected more of it occurring during year 3 than we've seen. So this is kind of it's a story of good news and bad news. The good news is that for our students who are taking college-level courses and attaining credit, they are attaining lots of credit, which is awesome to see. So you'll see that in that sub-bullet underneath the second bullet, that our average number of credits is 12.9 per student for those who are achieving credit. So that's, I mean, practically a semester, their first semester of college that they're already achieving, which is great, and it exceeds our goal of 11 credits per student. So that's awesome. But how many students are actually attaining credit? It varies widely across grants, which is understandable because your program models are different. But one of the goals of the program, which we talked about earlier, is that by the time someone completes the YCC program, we want every student to have taken at least one class that results in college credit. And so right now, 18% of our students have attained post-secondary credit. And granted, you know, our 9th graders and maybe our 10th graders, we wouldn't expect to attain college credit yet. But by the time they get into 11th and 12th grade, we probably would expect some college credit. So that's one of those other things, is make sure you're recording that post-secondary credit when it occurs. And then we have 4 grantees who have over 60% of their participants attaining post-secondary credit, and even 1 grantee with over 80% of our participants achieving post-secondary credit, which is awesome, and shows you that it's possible to, you know, get students to attain lots of credit. Some other good success stories. We have over 1,100 high school diplomas attained. Again, this is very tied into your program model. If you have a 9 through 12 program model, you probably don't have a lot of high school diplomas attained yet. And then over 1,300 have obtained industry-recognized credentials, which is great to see. And see that last sub-bullet, that is an increase from 442 at this point in year 2. So huge increase in credentials from year 2 to year 3. Long-term performance indicators. This is where I talked about at the beginning of this session that for some of our programs, we're starting to see long-term performance data. For other programs who have the 9 through 12 models, we probably aren't getting that so much. So I only looked at this for programs who would expect to have program completion and high school diploma attainment. Not fair to measure someone who hasn't reached the point where they could have completed the program yet or could have obtained their high school diploma. So where we are, 62% program completion rate, program to date. So this is only of students. If you recall in the PTS, you have to put in an expected program completion date. So this is for only students who have an expected program completion date that has already occurred. And so of those students, 62% have successfully completed the program. I don't think that's an accurate number because as we've all talked about, you know, our exit rate is pretty low for the program. So I'm thinking part of it is not entering in that program completion date in the PTS for those who have completed the program. So for those of you who have students with expected completion dates that have already occurred, make sure to go back and enter those completion dates if they have successfully completed the program. And so that's half of you. We looked at the grantees, and exactly 12 of the 24 grantees have participants with expected program completion dates that have already happened. So for you 12 grantees, you should make sure that you're entering that data. And how we're looking pretty good. At this point, 9 of the 12 are above 70%, and 6 are above 80%. And then you can see up there, 3 grantees are very low based on expected program completion date. And I'm guessing it's most likely due to a lack of data. So here's the good news for you all, is that some point over the next day, I'm going to tell you if you fall into that group of people and you need to fix your data. I'm not going to stand up here and shame anybody and say this grantee has a 10% program completion rate, you need to fix it. But I do want to talk to all the grantees that I see have issues with their data. I think for the most part, it's entering data into the PTS. I think some of it is actual performance and needing to have more internships and things like that. But I think the bulk of it is data entry, which is, again, why I showed you that slide at the beginning of the importance of this data. We all know it's tedious work to enter the data into the PTS, but this is the reason why it's important, is we want to make sure that the data reflects accurately all the great things we're achieving so we can show that to our stakeholders, show that to our communities, make a case for our program. So I'll make sure everybody here finds out which of the measures they might be struggling with. So my plan is after the session, I can meet with a couple grantees and show them where they are, and then everyone else, the very last session today is with coaches, where we have coaches sessions. And I'm just going to kind of float around and go into those rooms and pull grantees aside just for a couple minutes and show them the things they need to focus on. That sounds good to everybody. Does that work? Or I could just stand up here and announce it, but I don't think that works quite as well. Any questions so far? All right. High school diploma attainment rate. Again, I don't think this accurately reflects where we are. We're at 59% based on those who have an expected high school attainment date that's already passed. We have 17 of the 24 grantees have participants who, based on the data you entered, had expected high school attainment dates already. And of those 17, 11 are doing pretty well, above 70%, 9 are above 80%. So that leaves 6 that are below 70%, and 2 that are extremely low, most likely due to lack of reporting. So that's something you need to fix, and before you leave here today, you'll find out if you're one of those grantees. And then credential attainment rate, we're at 40% program to date, and we have 4 grantees doing really well that are above 55%. All right, see how I'm doing on time, just where I want to be. So this is my last slide. So here is my guidance to you for year 4. I think I probably said most of this stuff during the presentation. But number 1, make sure to enter participation dates for both the coming year, year 4, and for past years if you haven't done it. That's what drives the yearly program retention date. That's what we just talked about, where Gene talked about using the export feature to figure out who doesn't have a year 3 participation date. So make sure and go back to do that. The one thing we had a question, this is kind of a technical question, but I'll try and explain it so it makes sense, is I've talked a little bit about, for all your participants, you enter an expected cohort completion date when they're going to complete the program, and an expected high school diploma attainment date when you expect them to complete high school. So if someone's enrolling in 9th grade, then that date is 4 years out when they finish 12th grade, right? So we had a question of, now that we're late into year 3, moving into year 4 in the program, what do we do about those dates if those dates are after the end of the DOL program? Are we supposed to put it when our program ends, or are we supposed to put it when they're, stay in the program if they were going the full 3 years or 4 years, however long your program model is? And the answer is enter the date based on when they truly would complete the program and when they truly would attain their high school diploma. So even though those dates will be beyond the length of our DOL-funded program, you should still enter those dates into the PTS, because that way, when our program ends, it won't look like a bunch of people were supposed to have graduated high school or completed the program when they're still in 10th grade. Does that make sense to everybody? Technical point, but it's an important one because it could really skew the data if we don't get that right. More guidance for the coming year. Make sure to enter outcomes when they occur. We're finally getting to the point where we'll have outcome data. So post-secondary credit attainment, I talked about that. High school diploma attainment, program completion, entrance into post-secondary education, start to collect that data. And then lastly, and again, I've talked about this, if you notice that your rates are lower than you would expect them to be, it's probably due to a lack of data entry. So use that export feature, go back, figure out where the holes are, and please fix your data so that we accurately reflect as a program where we are. Because we're all in this together. Our national data gets shared far and wide, and we want to make sure it's reflecting all the great work you're doing. So I'm just going to quickly tell you if you're a grantee that should talk to me. So the good news is that there are 10 of you, 10 grantees in this room, who have no issues with any of their data that I found. And you don't have to spend any time with me today, which is, great for you, and we're glad that some are in that boat. So all I'm going to do is say the name of the grant if everybody's comfortable with that. I'll not talk about where the issue is or anything. I just want to make sure people know to find me before today is over. So listen for your grant name. Ivy Tech, Manufacturing Renaissance, Buffalo, Galveston, Prince George's County, Upper Explorerland, Iowa, West Side in Omaha, Lawrence County, Los Angeles, New York City, Denver. See, even Denver, who's hosting us. Even if the coach talks to you, I want to personally talk to each of these 14 grants about it. But Denver, who is a great grantee, who we've all seen that in person, hasn't entered their data for some stuff. So don't feel bad about it. We just want to fix it. And then Toledo, Tucson, and Pike Township. All right, any last questions before I bring Nan up? All right, thank you.
Hi. Okay, so now you can read what I'm going to say. How's that? Better? But take that off because, good, one of the lines was incorrect. I'm Nan Maxwell and from Mathematica Policy Research, and with me is Jean Bellotti over there. And together we are directing the YCC evaluation. And we've met many of you over the years at these conferences. We've talked to you on the phone. We've seen you in person, some of you a lot of times, and it's just so exciting to be here. I want to start by emphasizing, like Evan did, the importance of the evaluation and getting data. And I'm listening to Evan talk about the stakeholders and the interest in this. And I'm thinking, okay, if I was in the audience, I would be thinking, why is Nan going to get up and talk to me about more data collection? Evan just spent an hour, maybe it wasn't an hour, talking about all the data we're collecting. Why is Mathematica here doing more? The data in the PTS are about participants. They show stakeholders, lots of stakeholders, the good work you're doing and what you're doing. They show what program participants do. There's a second level to showing evidence about how successful the programs are. And that second level is, okay, but what would those participants be doing if there weren't YCC or programs like YCC? And the data that are in the PTS, the data on your participants, the wonderful things you're doing, the wonderful things they're doing, you can't demonstrate that those are because of the program unless you compare them to students that aren't in there and show what they would be doing without the program. It's a higher level of rigor. And that's what this evaluation is doing. That's what this evaluation will show. going to raise the level of rigor of evidence about the success of programs like in this case, YCC. And the program may not be called YCC, but the program may be called something else, and it's something very similar. And you want evidence of success at a very rigorous level about what you're doing so that you can go out and continue the good work you're doing. And that's why it's really, really important. Just to piggyback on what Evan said. So, first of all, I want to give you all guys a huge thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. We couldn't be doing this evaluation. We could not be providing evidence of what your program's doing without you. You guys have been amazing. All of you, all 24 of you, have completed a 2005-15 grantee survey. All of you, as of today, have completed a 2017 grantee survey. Late-breaking news. Way to go, guys. All of you have talked to us on the phone and told us about your program. All of you, despite what Evan said, have entered data into the PTF. You've done that for us. Furthermore, 15 of you have hosted us on site visits. Some of you have hosted us on site visits multiple times. Some of you are very good friends of ours at this point. You've hosted us so many times. 10 of you have worked very closely with us to randomly assign students into the YCC program and fill out what must have seemed like interminable paperwork that went with that. So you've done a huge amount for us to further this evidence of this program, and I think you all deserve a round of applause. So, what am I going to tell you about today? Today I'm going to talk about and remind you about what the evaluation really is and its different components. A lot of you have heard this before. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. Then I'm going to talk about early results of the findings that we have from the implementation study. Talked a lot about this in detail last year. Evan's given you some data, but I want to put it at a very high level and tell a little bit of the story in a little different way this time. The third thing I'm going to do is talk about future evaluation activities, where we're headed, what we're going to do, and what more is coming in terms of data collection. Most of you will like that part a lot. So let's start with the evaluation overview. As most of you know, there are three components to the evaluation. There's really two big ones. We're doing what's called an implementation study and looking at what the programs are doing. We're also doing an impact study, which is what I talked about before. The impact study actually compares what's happening, the outcomes from the program, with the outcomes of what would have happened to a similar group of students had that, and it provides evidence of impact. The implementation study, which is what we're going to be talking about today, really answers the questions: how are the activities and the services of YCC being implemented? The impact study, the two components, both components, the lottery-based study and the comparison group impact study, both components together will answer questions about what is the effect of YCC on a wide variety of outcomes. Again, today we're going to focus on the findings of early implementation. So before I start, I'd like to talk about which grantees are involved in which components of these evaluations. And I'm talking about participation in terms of data collection. And if you talk about the impact study, the impact study is really only being done on a subgroup of grantees. And the data collection for that, we've got a follow-up survey, and there are 3 different grantees participating in that. We have, for the comparison group study, we have 4 different grantees participating in that. And then for the comparison group design, we have up to 16 districts participating in that. For the implementation study, again, all grantees are providing us with information on their QPR, Quarterly Progress Report narratives, and for the PTF. And, as you all just heard, for the grantee surveys. We're getting information from all of you. Then we're doing site visits to 10 different grantees. And we also collected and used what we call baseline information forms of students in 8 different districts, or actually 8 different grantees. So, the focus of today's talk on implementation. What are the research questions? What are we doing when we look at implementation? First question is, what type of students does YCC serve? Evan's already talked about that. Great slides. I don't need to say more. You know what kind of students we're serving, given what Evan said. The last one about sustainability, we don't have information yet. These are early findings from early implementation. So sustainability, we'll be getting a lot of that information from the 2017 grantee survey and from our final round of site visits. So I'm not going to be talking about that today. What I will be talking about today are the middle 3 questions. So what data am I going to use? What data do we use to report these things? QPR narratives and the PTS data are through the 2015-2016 school year. The grantee survey is the 2015 survey. The 10 site visits are from the ones we did spring 2016. And the baseline information forms were administered during the 2015-2016 school year. So when I say we're talking about early implementation, I really mean what was happening in the first year or year and a half of this program. Let's answer the first question. How do YCC programs differ from other programs? And by other programs, most of this information is taken from the 2015 grantee survey. And we can see that the YCC program differs from other programs, or what other programs students would take, in each of the 3 core areas of YCC. In terms of preparing students for college and careers, most of those differences, when we looked at most of those differences fell into the category of class-based differences. You can see where there's increased instruction in work readiness and in industry. There's coursework that articulates. It articulates more often in YCC than in other programs. It articulates to 2- and 4-year programs, and it articulates to industry-recognized credentials. And the other thing it does, the courses, they engage in more active learning pedagogies, such as problem-based learning, Project Lead the Way, and the type of pedagogies talked about yesterday. And the second area that YCC program differs from other programs that are existing is in connecting to career track employment. Most of these differences fall in the area of work-based learning. Field trips, job shadowing, those are the 2 areas that really stand out as different with the other programs. There's some difference, but not as much difference in paid internships. Some difference, but not as much difference in the group mentoring. There's some difference, but not a lot, in some of the class-based stuff, and that is bringing speakers from the work to the school. And in the final component, offering academic and non-academic support, we see 2 big differences. One is in building a small learning community. 3 things that YCC programs do more than other programs that aren't YCC. Students take courses together with teachers. They take courses together as a cohort. Teachers work with, that's 2 things. Teachers work with a small group of students. The third thing is YCC programs tend to have their own separate physical space, more so than other programs in the school. So that's the 3 main ways that they differ from other programs. Counseling happens outside of YCC. There's not a lot of differences there. What is different about YCC counseling seems to be, at least from the grantee survey, in the framing of it. It's the use of the individual development plan. It's the framework in which the counseling takes place. That's the difference between YCC and other programs. Our students participating in the program, Evan talked a lot about this. You know, I don't have a lot to add. He talked about the high attendance rate and the retention rate. The only thing I will add, and I think you said, what was it, 96% attendance rate? I can give another statistics on the national rate there. It is closer to 91%. So it does look like, again, can't draw any conclusions for that, but it's a good sign. What does professional development look like? Most frequent activities are project-based learning, incorporating an industry focus, building specific skills, and collaborating and building partnerships, community of practices. Challenges. There are a couple challenges that we learned from the site visits with this. Most of these stem from time. You can't force teachers to do professional development, and they've got a lot going on. You can't force districts to force teachers. They've got a lot going on. There's a lot of professional development activities required out there, and YCC activities have to somehow fit into that. Teachers have a lot of professional development in terms of learning how to do things like skill development and things like that, a lot of competition for their time. So it's a challenge. So what are the early successes? We've talked a lot about these, but just to put them in, these are what we see, Mathematica sees as the early successes so far. Recruiting a diverse group of students, establishing community partnerships. I talked a lot about that last year. Offering activities and services in all areas and expanding those opportunities to students within the district. What challenges did you face? You guys know this better than us, but let me reiterate what challenges you face. Evan talked about the first one, those services that require partnerships, mentoring, internships, dual enrollment. They require partnerships. They take time. They're slow to emerge and also for reasons you all talk about, and Evan talked about. Not all programs have their students there yet. So we hope to see that emerge. The second major challenge is, again, limited staff time and capacity. Oftentimes, staff are doing 2 or 3 jobs. You know that. You're stretched thin. YCC has afforded a great opportunity to hire more staff, but your programs are going crazy. So you need that staff to look at the expanding students, to serve the expanding students. And finally, the third challenge that we uncovered in site visits is just the rigor of the program has really been challenging for some students. And we want the rigor. The rigor is good. That's what our students need. And sites have been very, very good about finding ways to build that rigor, such as offering extra tutoring or offering an honors section, honors part of YCC. Future activities. Implementation study, ultimately we'll do all the questions. Grantee surveys done, check. We'll do final round of site visits to those 10 sites, and you guys will be entering data into your PTS, just like Evan said. Lottery-based impact study. Whole host of things we're going to be looking at there. Most of those will come from a follow-up survey. You guys won't have to be involved. Mathematica will do it. We'll contact your students. You may hear students talking about it, but that's it. That'll be done in the spring of 2018. We're also going to be looking at school records. School records will be accessed for all of the schools in that part of the study as part of the comparison group impact. We'll be starting to talk to many of those districts in the fall to see how we can ease that burden on you of collecting school records. And that's pretty much it. Any of us involved in this would be more than happy to talk to you. Unfortunately, Jessica and Gloria at the Department of Labor could not be here, nor could Peter. Jean and I are here and always happy to talk about the evaluation. Questions? I think I'm out of time, so.
Thank you, Nan, for that, and thank you all of those joining us on the webinar.